Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
All right, we're going to be tying a... originally, this is a Callibaetis nymph, and it's a little complicated. It's not just a simple little tie. It's got some materials, but it's very effective. And changed from the first version to have the Nymph-Head here, which is a swimmer and burrower shape. And so because of that, you could also use this for a brown drake. So besides the Callibaetis, you just vary the size and the color a bit. But they're overall similar shapes, not exactly, but anyway, so this is it's a nice little nymph. Again, mostly kind of still water for Callibaetis, but the drakes are found on rivers and wherever you find them. Okay, we'll start off tying on a little bit of thread at the top, just behind the eye of the hook. And you want to be careful not to build up a lot of bulk because we need this head to be able to come back up and cover this tie-in point. So trim off the excess there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our Mylar tinsel and we'll tie that on first. And if you're right-handed, you're going to have to tie this in a little backwards. So the Mylar tinsel, this is double-sided. It comes in orange and Peacock. So you want to tie it so that the orange side is up because we want that peacock to show. And so I'm just going to do a little pinch wrap here. And then that should sit directly on top. A couple of wraps. And now we're going to take some of our nymph skin. And this, it needs to be cut and tapered a little bit to tie in here. So we'll just give it a little trim to give us a good tie-in point. And the same thing, we're just going to tie this in and give it a little pinch wrap. And we want that to fit right on top. So you basically have both the materials right behind the eye of the hook. And we want to keep our wraps at a minimum. Yank that down there so it's on there tight. And then the idea would be this nymph head, if you've not built up too much bulk, can come sit right and hide that whole tie-in point, which is really nice. And then I like to whip finish these right here. You don't have to. You could pass the thread back over. But I'm just going to go in there with a small whip finish. And we move that up, and now we're going to grab some lead-free wire. This is 0.15 or 0.015. And then give this, about anywhere from 5 to 6 wraps. And this 0.015 is easy to bust off. And the whole intent of the lead here isn't so much to weight the fly. It's to give this something we can jam into the bead to make it stabilize. And once we've jammed that up inside of there, keep the nymph head nice and centered, and we'll attach the thread right behind that and into the lead-free wire. And work back to the bend of the hook where we're going to tie in the tail. The tail is this lemon wood duck. It's great material for tails. It's got a nice barred segmentation on it naturally. So even out some tips, maybe 6 fibers or so. And then we're going to measure that about the length of the abdomen. Tie that in. And then I try to rotate that so that the tie-in point is right on top, like that. And you can adjust the length if you need to. A little bit shorter there. And then we'll come in here and we'll use some of the tag ends to build up our taper, so you don't need to trim them all the way down. Plus it helps create a nice even taper on the fly. Okay, so The hardest part of this fly is knowing which sequence you should use to tie these materials in. So just remember, you tie in first what goes up last. So last on, or first in, last on. So the last thing that we wrap up on this one will be the wire. And so we've just got some gold small wire. And with the wire, I like to poke that right into the back of the Nymph-Head, and there'll be plenty of room in there. Okay, just a couple wraps there. We don't want to build up too much bulk at the tie-in point here. Next thing that will go on is our Mylar. And so we'll use size 14. And this is basically the back, kind of the top of the fly. So you want to tie this in with the Peacock side up, so that when we pull it over, the orange shows. But we want it right on top. Okay, next will be our Ostrich. So I'll take some Scud tan Ostrich Herl and clip the very tip off. Again, we'll just tie this in right here. Couple wraps. Then the body is going to consist of some pearl Mylar. And then we can work the thread up here and create the taper all the way up into the thorax. And we just want to even this out. So we'll come back down here and work the thread. Okay, so the body's a little bit more tapered. Now we'll just take our Mylar, our hollow tinsel, and just wrap the body. Don't mind the threads winding, it doesn't matter, it's up in the thorax anyway. And then we'll tie that off. Now I'll take another step here and use some, I like the Loon fluorescing. It's basically flow with the fluorescing property, and just a little tiny bit of this. And this is going to help reinforce our ostrich. So I'll just stick some on the top there, and then we'll spread it around with the bodkin. Again, very thin layer. That way we can take our ostrich and wrap that up. And the ostrich is basically just a rib. And this is representing the gills. So once we get up to the thorax area with that, we'll tie that off and cure. And just zap that real quick. Okay, next material to come up is going to be our uni double-sided Mylar. Center that, tie it in. We'll do a couple wraps. Then I like to just pull it over and do a couple more wraps on top of that double over portion. The only reason I do that is just to reinforce it. Trim off the excess there. And then the final material to come up will be our wire. And we're just going to create a very simple ribbed body there. And you want to be moving that wire so it doesn't trap much of the ostrich herl if you can avoid it. Take off our wire. Okay, now to build the thorax, we're going to get some Hare'e Ice Dub. And this is where you start to vary the colors a little bit. I use tan because this is for more of a brownish Callibaetis. And this is just going to dub up the thorax a bit. Okay, there's our thorax built up, and we want to leave our thread right hanging from the middle of that. And we're going to add our legs, which are these Grizzly Micro legs. And I usually just tie them in as one piece and trim them up after that. And we got the legs in there. Then we're just going to add a tiny bit more dubbing to cover up that tie-in point, because we're going to actually tie in right on top of that anyway. And now pull that nymph skin, and we want to stretch it pretty good right over the top. Then grab the double-sided Mylar, center it, tie that off like so, and then just recenter that and whip finish. Almost done. Now we're going to trim the shell back there, the wing case. So I do this in a couple of steps. First, I will take the long piece here and cut it to the same length as we have from the eye to the tie-in point. And we're going to cut that one straight across. Like so. Yeah, maybe a little longer. Then I'm going to come in here and cut a V going that way, so it creates a V. I'll show you here. It's hard to show you on the camera. Okay, just a slight V, and then we'll taper these slightly. Like that. Now as the last step, we'll grab some more of this fluorescing UV and make sure my wing case is clear of debris, and then we're just going to lay a really thin layer of this on the top to finish it off. And you can see where that lights up. That's the fluorescing part of it. And as a final thing, you can come in here and brush that out a little bit. That can kind of also help obscure the last tie-in point there, like so, and it gives a little extra bugginess. But that's the deep dish.